because other books I could, struggle my way through, maybe hold it up to my nose, but then he's like pulling the book because he wants to see the pictures. Or I could try to get like a clunky magnifier and get that going. And if that works for folks, that's great. But I just felt that there was something else that I could try.
You're listening to the Water Prairie Chronicles, a podcast that supports parents of children with disabilities by sharing the stories of individuals who have grown up with disabilities and the organizations available to help parents along the way. Stay connected with us by clicking the subscribe button and leave us a comment if you want to join in on the conversation. Welcome back to the Water Prairie Chronicles, everyone. Today we have a guest with us. Her name is Crystal Boateng. Did I say that correctly, Crystal?
Close enough, yes. Crystal Boateng.
Close enough.
Yes. No, you did very well.
Right, so Crystal is with Inside Ability Books, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to welcome her first and have her introduce herself to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Boateng, as Tonya stated. A little bit about me. All right, well, professionally, my background is in human resources, and I've worked for many years assisting people with disabilities to get the accommodations that they need in employment. In addition to providing employment skills training to help individuals reach their employment goals. Personally, I am a hashtag boy mom. I have 2 young boys. One is 2 years old and one is 10 months old. They keep me and my husband's hands pretty full. As far as my likes, I've always considered myself to be a creative. I love getting lost in my imagination and words and wordplay and stories, which lend really well to adding to my repertoire, becoming a self-published author and founder of Inside Ability Books, a provider of accessible print storybooks.
So, Crystal, you are visually impaired as well, correct?
Yes, I am considered legally blind.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So at the age of 19, I was in college at the time. I developed an eye condition called uveitis, which is an autoimmune disorder, an inflammatory condition that affects the eyeballs. And then due to complications of that condition, I lost central vision entirely, which basically you use your central vision for details and intricate things, facial recognition, reading, seeing street signs, just practical things like subtitles in a movie. If you're a student, your textbooks, seeing the board, facial recognition, your friend walks in the room, you can't really identify them, different things like that.
Can you share what your greatest challenge is now visually?
I now have been visually impaired longer than fully sighted, and so I feel like I'm pretty well adapted. And when I'm in my own world, in my own routine, around people who are familiar with me and how I maneuver, I don't really come up against a lot of barriers, but in new settings is where I'm like, oh, snap, oh, yeah, I'm blind. That's right. Okay. That happened, right? So,
right.
So for me, it's probably new settings, new people, having to kind of explain what's going on with me and having them be a little confused, and probably having to explain a few times because vision loss is a spectrum, and most people who haven't known someone who lives with vision loss have a very limited understanding of it. And so for them, you either have difficulty seeing and then you get glasses or contacts and you're cured, or you can't see anything at all, right? So that huge, variant in the middle is something not a lot of people are exposed to. So if I go into a restaurant, let's say, and the menu is up on the wall, and I say, I've been here before, but I don't remember, do you guys have like a chicken sandwich that has blah, 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 blah? And then they'll literally turn around and point And so then I'm like, I have a visual impairment, or sometimes I'll say, well, I forgot my glasses. Do you mind just telling me da 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 da? And then you get sometimes people with like attitude, like, well, why do I have to? It's just right there. And so now, I have to explain, and it becomes a whole thing. So I would say that's probably the hardest thing is just being in settings where people are unfamiliar with how I move in the world, and trying to get their assistance or trying to do something I normally do, but when I'm around people I'm familiar with, they understand.
This is what's led you to begin Inside Ability Books, from what I understand.
Yes, absolutely. Being a mom of 2 young kids, finding storybooks that were large enough for me to read and comfortably participate in story time was practically impossible. If I, found one that had large print, it wasn't consistent throughout. It was more like a style choice for that page. And then also the level of contrast wasn't consistent either. So there would be like maybe a dark blue letters over a moderately lighter blue background. And that type of writing would not pop out for me to identify it and be able to read it. So it wasn't even like initially I said, okay, well, let me start an accessible print storybook company. I pretty much scoured the internet looking for options. I reached out to my local library, and I was told that I could get Braille embossed on storybooks. I could also receive storybooks that had like audio formatting. But I still felt like, well, I can read large print, and there's so many other things that are provided in large print, large print crossword puzzles and, different things like that. But what I found is a lot of the low vision aids were being targeted towards the aging population and kind of leaving out people like myself who, had young families and wanted to participate in something like Storybook Time. And in just, digging into my own experience, I realized that, low vision children as well, legally blind children, could benefit from having the larger words on the page, because they need to be able to see them repetitively to be able to learn the letters, learn the words, etc. Initially, my approach was that of a parent or caregiver reading to a child to assist them to learn. It being a child that's not old enough yet to read, but they would still need to see it to get to the point of literacy. So I found that in this process, I'm able to help even more people than I initially anticipated. When I first started, I was like, well, how do I just get this physical book in my hand for my own use? But in the process, it was such an undertaking, learning self-publishing, learning how to, get all those pieces together to have this, book manifested in my hand. I said, I can't be the only one with this challenge. I have to do this in a way that I can present it to the market so that parents like myself, caregivers like myself, parents of young children who, have similar visual challenges to my own can access this. And then so I decided to make a company because I was like, I don't want this to be, a one-off situation. I want to be able to produce, multiple offerings so that people have options.
And I've noticed that your books on your Instagram, you have several pictures up, and on your website as well of what the books look like. Yeah. Or it's one book right now, but in 2 versions.
Yes.
So tell us about the versions of the books.
Sure. So the book is titled Bedtime, Sleep Time, Nighttime, Dream Time. I hope that's clear on the camera.
Yes, it is. I like that.
And it is a large print bedtime story. And so for the most part, throughout this version of the book, you'll have large print with white background and black letters. So I'll show you that.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
And on the other version of it, for some people in the visual loss community, when there's a lot of white on the page, it can create glare. For instance, if the person has cataracts, if they have any kind of scarring inside the eye, debris, things of that nature. When light goes in, it refracts against those things and creates like a blinding glare, as though, like, let's say you're looking straight into, a light bulb or something like that. That's what can happen for some people. So what I did was I created a reverse contrast edition. Reverse contrast is basically the opposite, which would be black background, white letters. So
Okay,
see that
yeah.
there. And then it's indicated on the cover that it is the reverse contrast edition.
Okay. So it's the same story,
Same
just
book.
just the way the wording is.
Exactly. My goal with the company is to provide accessibility options. Because as we spoke about vision loss being a spectrum, I understood that for some people, color is an issue as well as size. I prioritize the accessibility when creating these books because there aren't many companies that do prioritize the visual aspect in terms of accessibility, not to the level that they prioritize, the literary artistry and the graphic artistry. And so an additional feature that I put in is that the writing throughout the book are all on one side of the page. So if you're sitting with a child who has a visual impairment, they can sit on the side of the letters. If you have the visual impairment, you can sit on the side of the letters. So proximity-wise, it's even closer to you on top of being large and the contrast that you prefer.
So looking at the sample page that you just had up, what is the font size of the text?
Well, to be honest, I didn't want to focus strictly on font size because we can get kind of locked into, okay, well, it should be, font 26, so it should be font 75. What I tried to do was I looked at the graphics and I used up all the empty space. I just said, make it big. Because a lot of times what I'll find is with devices or even printed materials, people will get so locked into a number and then there's all this wasted space on the page. And I'm like, if the goal is big, let's get big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was less about, it being a Word document and going in and changing the text, but more of it from an artist perspective of, okay, this is our landscape, this is our image, and we want to take up, 2/3 of the page with text. We want to give it space. We want to give it the priority, right, on the page, because we have a dual function here. We want a relatable story. We want, a whimsical graphics that's engaging, but we also have to serve the purpose of being able to be accessible to the most amount of people. So I would say that was our approach versus, fine-tuning, like, what are the numbers? It was more just like, when you look at the page, have we optimized the text space in terms of size?
Right.
So, yeah.
So the reason I was asking is the page that you held up, the words are nice and large and clearly defined so you can see them.
Yeah.
But I noticed that the graphics are as well. You have a nice contrast on that as well.
And, so that was another thing. In this process of learning self-publishing and collaborating with an illustrator, I had to first identify for myself, what are the visual aspects that I wanted to prioritize in terms of the graphics, not just the text. And when you meet with an illustrator, they want to know, what kind of animation do you like? If you say it's a bedroom, well, what level of detail of bedroom are we talking about? If we say a bathroom, are we talking tile, on the walls? Are we talking, like, what level of detail? And so for me, I wanted just the key aspects. So in the living room, it's a very zoomed in view of the living room, and it's a very basic view of the living room to give context.
Right.
So we have a window, we have a ceiling fan. We don't have so much going on that we're losing what the scene is trying to show. Right? We don't have crazy wallpaper. We don't have toys of different sizes, close colors scattered all over the floor. It's a very basic room. It's a very dark, big couch. You can see right away what that is. So you're, with just 3 items on this page, you get living room. Right?
Right.
And so,
but you still have the shadows. You don't have a flat picture. You still have character to the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if there's a lampshade in it, and so you see that light, shining off of the characters from the space where it is. And so those were things that I had to work out in the process, right? So the illustrator would send me something, and I would say, okay, that works. I don't think that works. And it was a conversation. And I was really, really, really happy with how it turned out. When I received the sample, it honestly was a cheerful moment for both myself and my husband, because this was the first time that I was able to sit and read a storybook to my son.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because other books I could, struggle my way through, maybe hold it up to my nose, but then he's like pulling the book because he wants to see the pictures. Mm-hmm. Or I could try to get like a clunky magnifier and get that going. And if that works for folks, that's great. But I just felt that there was something else that I could try. With the spectrum of vision loss being as varied as it is, the spectrum of accommodations that should be available should be, just as varied. And I just took a chance. I said, well, let me see, and the dimensions of the book are 11 inches by 11 inches, because I knew I wanted jumbo. And I wasn't going to get jumbo in your standard size children's book that's like 8 by 8 or, 8 by 10. I wanted big, and a big square that I could use a lot of the space for what I needed to do.
So I'm thinking, just as we're talking and having seen the pages on the books there, you have the situations where you have a parent with low vision, mm-hmm. Or beyond low vision even, being able to read the book now because of the contrast that's in it.
Yes.
You have the child who is visually impaired but still has functional vision to be able to read the book, not necessarily the words, but to start absorbing what those words mean, that they are words,
right?
As they're navigating early literacy.
Right.
You have grandparents who may be at a point where they're developing cataracts or other vision loss later in life that are able to now read with their grandchildren. But even a classroom teacher in a preschool setting, being able to hold the book up and the children can then see what's there on the page instead of seeing little tiny things as she's reading a book to the class. Absolutely. So even beyond vision loss, there's other situations.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for coming up with this idea. I'm hoping that this really can reach out to a lot of people, because I see so many benefits with just the one version of the book that you have now.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to another question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the future plans? Do you have more stories coming out?
Yes, I have tons of stories. Like I said, I consider myself a creative, and I just love to imagine and storytell. And actually, when I was 19 and I was going through vision loss, a lot of what allowed me to remain positive and hopeful and inspired towards my future was diving into my creativity. That was absolutely my happy place. And so this actually, coming at this stage of life, created an outlet for me to just pump out what's inside of me already.
Yeah.
So I have tons of, storybook concepts lined up. I have a few already written. I'm in conversation with some illustrators to basically have some releases winter 2023, spring 2023. So I'm excited for what's to come. All good stuff.
So that's it. Good. So I was hoping it wasn't going to be a long time before we could see more coming out.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just completed a successful Kickstarter campaign in June, the end of June, actually, to be able to fund the launch of the company and launching the first printing. So those books arrived in July, and all those pre-orders went out, and now my website is live, and I'm actually selling the books straight from the website. And, it's a one-woman operation. So it's a huge milestone to get these two out, and my hope is just to continue on that momentum and to reinvest and just keep pumping out more books, because we definitely need those options in the market.
So parents, grandparents that are listening to this, if they would like to purchase this book or to pre-purchase maybe future books, we'll see kind of how that's going to run.
Sure.
What do they need to do? Where can they go?
They can go to my website, www.iabilitybooks.com. And please do follow me on social media. I have an Instagram page at inside_ability_books. There I'm always posting updates, even from when the concept started. I was posting updates. I was posting updates about pre-orders being available through my Kickstarter campaign, which I was really happy to have completed that successfully a week and a half before deadline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had some really, really, really good feedback and a really good response. And then I, posted updates that the books were here, that it was going to be shipping day, it was going to be signing day. And so definitely once I have even like the next cover out, I'll be putting that out to say, coming soon.
Good.
And getting folks a blurb about what that's about so they can anticipate that next release. So all of those things generally go up on my Instagram.
Excellent. And for those that are listening to the podcast, look in the show notes. We'll have a link to her website and to the Instagram. And if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the description below. You'll see the same links there so that we can make sure that you can get in touch with her and follow her. And it sounds like it's something that they're going to want to subscribe to follow you.
Yes, please
so
do.
that they can see when these new books are coming out.
Yes.
Are there copies of that book available now on the website? Can they order it now?
Yes, you can order it right now, both copies, the
Good.
straight edition and the reverse edition. So the books are created to be inclusive of the low vision and legally blind community, but can absolutely be enjoyed by families and households, whether they live with vision loss or not. My aim was to create a cute story, a very wholesome story, a very nice, peaceful story at bedtime, to send the little ones off into very pleasant, enjoyable dreams. So in terms of new things on the horizon, I'm going to have adventure stories, empowerment stories, educational stories. So I'm really excited of what's to come.
So one thing that I didn't ask you earlier, I wanted to ask was Inside Ability Books.
Yes.
How did you come up with the name?
Sure. So if you look at the logo, what it is, it's an open book that basically opens the disc of disability. And so the concept is that if you look beyond, right, the concept of disability and you focus on inclusion, you focus on accessibility, there's so much more to that story. Right? People always stop at disability. Right. But if you kind of open it up, right, and look more at, well, what can be done to create inclusion for people who have this barrier? What can be done to create accessibility for people who have this barrier? Then, how much of a disability do they have, right? If you're sitting with your child and you're reading my book, how disabled do you feel in that moment, right? Because inclusion has been created, accessibility has been provided. And so that was the concept. And then using the little magnifier, speaks to visual impairment.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm glad I asked the question because it's a nice logo.
Mm-hmm.
I like it's striking and I don't want to say cute because it's not cutesy cute, but it's unique.
Thank you.
But knowing the backstory behind it, I like it even more.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Well done, well thought out. I like that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Like I said, in my heart, I'm just like a creative. So when I sat with this concept of creating this book company and, putting out these books, I really treated it like, my baby. And I wanted it to be deep, right? Because I wanted it to help people who, in my opinion, are not receiving a lot in terms of inclusion at this time. Right.
Interesting. The other thing I was going to share too, and I'm sure you've heard this, I know you've already thought about it. When my first child was born, now Emily's the one who's visually impaired, we were given all those books. Some of them were older children's libraries that they were finished with, and they passed those on to us. We had tons of books to read. And I was able to read them to her, mm-hmm. but she couldn't see the pictures. because so many of them would be watercolor pictures with no definition,
Right.
things like that. And that's why I was looking at the contrast of the pictures even in the book.
Yeah.
That the child is able to follow and look at the pictures while they're listening until they're old enough to really focus on the words.
Right.
And so you're hitting from day one the different stages of literacy for the children. So I was enjoying seeing that, because I remember all the years either my mom gave my daughter a book for, I think, her first birthday, and had tediously gone through the entire book with a black contrast pen and outlined everything she could find to try to make it accessible for her. So.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is, in the process of creating it, it had to be accessible to me.
Right, exactly. So you weren't even having to rely on a test group out there.
Exactly.
You're able to screen it out.
Exactly.
So without further ado, we're going to go into what I call everyone's favorite part of the interview, our speed round. For those who haven't listened to the podcast before, we finish each of our interviews with a group of 10 questions that we ask all of our guests. And we call it a speed round, but there's really no rush. It's just whenever you can answer it. And it's 10 simple questions that have absolutely nothing to do with the interview at all. It's the same 10 questions. And the first 3 will be open-ended. You'll just answer whatever comes to mind for you. The last 7 questions are either or, and I'll read 2 words or phrases, and you'll just pick one of those. There's not a right or wrong answer. If you like them both, you can say both. If you don't like either one, you can say neither. So there isn't a right or wrong through the whole thing. But it is a fun way that, even though all of our guests are very different, they come to us for different reasons, for different types of disabilities that we're talking about. But we're finding that this is a way to kind of show that no matter what our backgrounds are, we have a lot of similarities between each other as well. So it has been fun seeing some of our answers.
Sure.
So, First questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite color?
My favorite color, funny enough, when I was growing up, was blue. And as an adult, I'm leaning more towards green. So it's kind of like a blue-green aqua. That's my favorite color.
So our Water Prairie logo is all of the shades of...
Exactly. I was definitely drawn to that. I was like, this is a sign.
There you go. All right. What was the last book that you read? And you can't say your book.
Oh. Well, funny enough, the last book that I physically read was my book, but in terms of audiobooks, right?
Right, there you go.
That's how I consume other types of, adult novels.
Right.
It was the Four Agreements. The Four Agreements on. It's I guess it's the genre of self-help about self-transformation and achieving, your highest self and your highest goals. That one was pretty good.
Okay, and what is your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday, I would say, is probably Thanksgiving. It just brings everyone together. There's a lot of food. I love food. And just merriment. There's game playing. There's reminiscing. And it's for no other reason than to just be grateful and thankful for the year you've had, and grateful and thankful for the blessings in your life. And it's just a generally happy time. Like, it's just super, super happy.
Either or. That's where we're going now.
Okay.
All right, so cake or ice cream?
Ice cream, for sure.
Batman or Superman?
Batman.
Ocean or mountains?
Ocean.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Watch a movie or read a book? And audio counts?
I say watch a movie because it's more social. And I like to talk to the TV, which annoys other people. But I've at least started to say pause it. And then I get my rants out. And then I'm like, okay, press play.
Honesty. I like it. All right, Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
To be honest, not too familiar with both, but back in the day, they were like family trips to go see the Lord of the Rings movies. Whereas not so much for Harry Potter. I guess I was a little bit older at that time. So I say Lord of the Rings.
Okay. And then Twitter or Instagram?
I'm way more familiar with Instagram, although I'm hearing great things about Twitter, and that is a great platform to be on to connect and build community. So I hope to build a Twitter presence, but for right now, Instagram.
So, Crystal, thank you for joining us today on Water Prairie. I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing this great resource for families.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for having me on your platform. And I must say, definitely kudos to your platform and to, speak to a community of people who are in need of resources, are looking for resources, are looking for community, are looking for examples of, where their child can be as an adult living with a disability. Looking for examples of the best way to support and prepare their children for a world where they have certain barriers, and I think it's a great space. It's a needed space, and I'm super lucky that you plucked me out of the world of things going on in the internet. So thank you so much.
This podcast is made possible by support from our listeners. We want to give a shout out to our superfan, Praveen S. If you want to help offset the cost of producing the Water Prairie Chronicles, become a supporter at buymeacoffee.com/waterprairie.
Leave a review about the podcast to make it easier for others to find it. And thanks for your support. You've been listening to the Water Prairie Chronicles. Any resources mentioned during this episode will be posted in the description. If you're interested in joining us as a guest, contact us through the links in the description below. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your friends. We appreciate your support as we build this resource. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for a new episode.